Hello, everybody. I'm Everton de Oliveira from the Groundwater project. And as you know, we're delivering free books for you to learn hydrogeology. Groundwater is the future. Lots of people need to know about groundwater. And if you're interested, you have to study it because the life, of the planet depends on hydrogeology. And we are doing a volunteer work with lots of good people. And today is not different. I bring to you another volunteer that's done a great job preparing a book for us. His name is Gavin Kennedy, and he's an environmental science from the McMaster's University in Canada, and he has a master's degree at the University of Waterloo in Canada as well. And he's a research hydrogeologist at the Geological Survey Division of the Nova Scotia Department of Energy and Mines. Welcome, Gavin. Please, briefly, tell us your path on hydrogeology and how you found the Groundwater project, please.
Okay. Well, I had heard John Cherry speak at various venues about this groundwater project, and I was just really inspired by the objectives that they were trying to achieve here. The synthesis of all that groundwater knowledge as a package that can be freely accessed by anyone is a significant and worthwhile undertaking that I think is going to really advance the state of groundwater management worldwide and groundwater science. When I heard they were looking for volunteers for books related to domestic wells, I thought I was a good fit. And I was happy to volunteer my time to be a part of it. And I'm thankful to my organization that was supportive of me, letting me get involved.
That's very good. That's very good. Yes.
And just one correction there, Everton. I'm actually with now the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables. There's been a recent name change in our department. So I wanted to get that on the record.
Well, I forgot that you should have mentioned. We correct. I thought you were a geologist and then you're an environmental scientist. That's fine. So sorry about that. So
no problem.
Could you repeat again the name of your department for everybody?
Yeah, the department is the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, and I'm with the Geological Survey Division.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Your book is about well record database and their uses. And it's very important, the final word, their uses, because it is something that people need to know about. You have a long experience on this topic. What brought you to it, and how you started, and what has called your attention to, well record database?
Yeah, so in a small province like Nova Scotia, where you may have more limited resources to deploy in terms of collecting primary data, secondary data, availability of secondary data collected as part of existing groundwater management programs is hugely important. When I first initiated the hydrogeology program at the survey, I took a lead role in organizing and building these data sets into a spatial relational architecture so that they could be readily used. And the biggest data set we have in the province, the biggest water data set, is the water well logs database. And it's been really underutilized in terms of generating insights and knowledge about the province's groundwater resources. So over the last 15 years, I've helped manage the database, and I've used it extensively in various research projects. So it's been a real useful tool, I guess, for me as a hydrogeologist.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so. Well, I'm telling you, I like your book. I read it in detail. In many places around the world, the recording of information of well drilling, installation, water quality is in existence for most of the wells. I can tell you about that from my own experience here in Brazil, because we once estimated that we have about more than 80% of the wells are not registered anywhere, so they don't exist, let's say. And yeah. The only, when we go to we want to drill a well somewhere, you know how we do? We phone the friends and see who has done, work in that area and knows something. That's what your database would provide for everybody, I believe. So
Sure.
what is the major damage that you point in this situation, and we don't have this information? What is lost, and who is the main loser?
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind immediately is the cost. Is, you know, like if you know something about, you know, the terrain, the groundwater environment, you can lower your costs, and you can you know, from a well owner perspective, you can get those wells installed at a cheaper price. But groundwater occurs below the ground surface, and so it makes the study and understanding of groundwater challenging and expensive. Every time a well is dug or drilled, we get a window into the nature of the groundwater system. So if we aren't capturing this information, it's an opportunity lost for understanding the resource and its utilization. Just from a public health perspective, it's really critical that we know about you know, where people are sourcing their water from, where the wells are located, so that we can manage potential exposures to groundwater contaminants. And in terms of well owners, they need to know about their water well in order to manage it, to know about its water quality and quantity. So just from the perspective of private well stewardship, private well owners really need that record in order to diagnose issues with their well, to understand if they've, you know, why they might be having changes in quality and quantity over time.
That's very good. Do you have an idea on, are all the wells registered? How do you call that in Canada?
Yeah, we don't, in Nova Scotia, they're not registered, but we have a regulation as part of a piece of legislation where we require well records to be submitted following the completion of the well. So they don't need to, you know, pre-register for it as an activity. It's just that when a well is completed, the well construction contractor is required to submit a record of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they don't have a permit for water extraction.
No,
Okay.
no, permit is not required.
Okay.
And we don't have 100% compliance like everyone else. You know, it's always you know, a challenge to ensure we are getting you know, good capture of that information.
Yes, that's a problem. We rarely have. That's very difficult. Yes. So what is, you have an experience, and you work quite extensively with the database. What is the main gain, and who's the winner? Is only the state, or the individuals are winners on that as well?
Yeah, well, I think it's a really diverse group of information users that gain from recording of water well construction data. And yeah, starting with the well owner, who can better understand and manage their water supply, right up to groundwater managers such as myself and groundwater researchers, who can use this information to better understand and manage aquifers at the aquifer, you know, system level, to ensure groundwater is being used safely and sustainably. So I think it's, yeah, a real, you know, the winners are a real range of users, and it all depends on how you're using that information. So I think that it can benefit a wide variety of users.
I totally agree with you. Not easy for us to make people understand how important it is, right?
Yeah, sure. And hopefully this book.
I hope your book give a push in that direction.
I like that.
Your book is very well organized. Congratulations. I like it. And could you please make an overview of it for us, please?
Okay, yeah, I'll try to do that. The book provides an overview of the history, availability, uses, shortcomings, and practices of well record databases, which is useful background for a range of different types of users, such as students, educators, researchers, groundwater professionals, and managers. The book looks at the evolution of well record databases over the past 50 years. So we've seen them evolve from these hard copy archives of forums to open distribution of well record data over the internet in a digital format. And the book does try to compile examples of these databases from around the world, so that you know, there'll be a useful reference there for people if they want to see what these databases look like in various jurisdictions. The book identifies diverse types of users and well record information and provides a number of examples of how the data is used to support groundwater research and management activities. A discussion in the book is provided of common deficiencies and best practices for well record data management, which may be used as a framework for realizing improvements to well record management programs over time. And lastly, the exercises will be useful. And there's like a little section at the back of the book which provides some, exercises and solutions. And we think those will be useful as a educational tool for educators who are teaching students about groundwater.
Yeah, that's very good. So, in your own experience, what would be the minimum requirements? The information that would be good for people to take a note and record and send to regulators like you, or for in general people, because people think some of the information, they think it's very expensive. For example, here in Brazil, it would be good for us once you have the borehole done and everything in place. You could make a profile, a geophysical profile of that, because that would be very handy. But people won't do that because it's expensive. So what do you think it's the minimum requirement? What do you recommend?
Yeah, I think, as a minimum, we need to know where the well is, have some sort of reference as to where the well is located for it to be useful. Ideally, that's using, a GPS sort of coordinates. It's your smartphone or whatever, right? We want to know about the depth of the well, ideally, and at least, what type of aquifer it's completed in, whether it's bedrock or superficial. That would be useful. So something like depth where bedrock is encountered, the water level, and the yield. And obviously a little bit about the construction of the well, whether it's the diameter and the amount of casing and things like that. So at a minimum, like those are sort of minimum, I think, standard for collecting well record information. If we have those, we can do a lot with that amount of information. Yeah.
What about the lithology of it? Would that be important?
It's important now. Absolutely. I think it may, in some jurisdictions, that may, well contractors may be wary of doing that because they don't feel they're qualified to identify lithologies, and so we wouldn't want that to be something that would prevent them from submitting a well record, right? So that information is extremely valuable, and if it's possible, it'd be great if that was included in the well record. But like I said, if they're not comfortable, if they don't feel like they have a good grasp of the lithologies, at least if they know if it's in the bedrock aquifer or a superficial aquifer, that in itself is helpful.
Yeah, that is very important, because in my experience, what I see is that people are a bit, they're uncomfortable because they don't have a geologist on site to help them, and then so this is an information that they're not able to interpret in a field.
Yeah.
So we end up having nothing. If you ask too much, you have nothing.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a balance there.
Exactly. Yes. So it is important that you mentioned that those are information, and the information that you mentioned, they are quite basic. We can get them today easily. The depth.
Yeah, and oftentimes they're estimates, right? I mean, we don't need to necessarily, measure the static water level and have a long-term flow test to get estimates of those things.
Yeah, that's true. Well, but usually, but those are typical tests that you would do. You want to dimension your extraction, your pumps and materials. So you might have your test, right? Usually,
yeah,
that's what you expect. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, and usually, what do you receive from people there in Nova Scotia? You have a detailed report, or only the basics, like you mentioned?
It's a pretty detailed report. I think the quality of the reporting varies quite a bit depending on the contractor. But yeah, we require a fair bit of information. I think it's like kind of an 11 by 17 page with quite a few fields. Many of them aren't filled in when we get the records, but a lot of times the key ones are, and lithology would be part of that record, as would yield, static water level, purpose of the well, drilling technique, well construction materials. So those sorts of things are all part of it. I think there's an example of a typical log from our jurisdiction in the book.
Yes, there is. There is. Yes. Your book is quite extensive. It's very good. Lots of examples and exercises for people. So who is the public of your book? Who have you had in mind when you wrote it? And whom do you believe would profit the most by reading it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I tried to make the book appealing to a wide range of audiences, like from students and educators to groundwater researchers and managers, as well as well contractors, if there's interest. I hope that it's useful for those jurisdictions in particular that are looking for the justification and a framework for developing or improving their well record management programs. And just by highlighting the importance of well record databases, I hope that the book can help build grassroots support for these databases. So in those jurisdictions that maybe don't have a program, it will help kind of used as a roadmap towards starting to collect this information and making it available to users.
Yeah, I think your book is quite useful. I would, it's I was thinking here when I read your book, it would be interesting if some company related to to the drilling market could distribute it and help distribute the book to their customers, because it's handy book. You can take a look and see why is important, and they could use. That'll be a good try. And I believe you have some contacts with these companies. Should give it a try. We can certainly help you in giving a push in that direction. I think it's a
great idea.
Very useful. And I'll send that to the Brazilian association here. I'm very close to the drillers. Let's see if it goes. We have to translate it first. It'll happen. It'll happen. It's on the list. It's on the list.
Awesome.
Okay. So what is your ideas about people from around the world? Because you brought your experience from Nova Scotia. So what are your expectations, and what do you think for the future of this book?
Yeah. And I recognize that the emphasis of the book is on North America because that's sort of what I'm most familiar with. I did try to bring in some examples from around the world. I guess in terms of my expectations, well, I think there's significant opportunity in many of those jurisdictions outside of North America for leading improvements in terms of how well record information is managed. I also think it could be useful in those areas as a valuable educational tool to kind of raise awareness of why this information is important, how it's collected here and has been for many years, and how they can maybe improve on that model and make it even better.
Yeah, that's very good. That's very good. So yeah, I agree with you, and I'll see if we can push your work ahead for people around the world, because it's a nice tool. I like the book. It's very objective for people to know. We have many organizations here in Brazil doing that, and around the world that would profit from your book for sure. Okay, all right, thanks. So please, I really liked your work. Would you please make your final remarks, or would you recommend becoming a hydrogeologist for people and studying hydrogeology? What's your expectation or the market? And please tell people about your experience and your final remarks.
Absolutely. When I was in school and I was environmental science, and you could have gone in a number of different directions, I was definitely attracted to working on water, seeing as it's such a vital part of everyone's everyday lives. And I was just attracted to trying to, I guess, build knowledge on our water resources, try to improve the way we manage it and understand it. So I'm really, happy with the way things went for me, where I kind of went from a sort of general environmental science, and I kind of became more and more focused on water, and then specifically groundwater. I've been over the last 20 years been just working on groundwater projects in the province of Nova Scotia. I've learned a lot, and I like to think that we've had an impact in terms of improving the way groundwater is managed here, and the availability of kind of our knowledge base on the province's groundwater resources. So, I mean, in closing, I hope that this ebook in some small way advances our management of groundwater. It can be used as an educational tool, and I hope that it encourages governments to develop and invest in effective well record management programs, including my own.
Well, it's always like that. We always need more. That's typical. Oh, but I have a personal question for you. You haven't mentioned in this interview, but you worked on your master's degree on, you've done modeling of a very specific situation, right? Mm-hmm. And usually when people go to a master's degree or even a PhD, they have in mind that they're bound to that topic for life, right? That's the first impression when you go to study something specific. Yeah. And you're a good example of someone who moved from there and established yourself in a very interesting area that is not exactly related to what you've done. Mm-hmm. So how is that experience? What would you say to people that are studying? Do they have to, concern about their future? What is the use of your master's after all?
I think the master's just kind of like gives you that foundation in terms of, how to pick tools to kind of fit a need. How you can, make those assessments of like, well, whether it's a model, it's a lab experiment, whatever, it'll help you kind of identify what's needed to solve the problem. So really, the master's gives you that foundation on problem solving. How to approach a problem, what are the tools needed to solve it, that kind of thing. And so, I don't think at all it puts you in a niche at all. I think that you have lots of opportunities to use that and apply that knowledge to wherever you take it. I definitely recommend. I did about 5 years of consulting, and I think that really gives you an experience where you can learn a lot about a lot of different things in a very quickly, very short amount of time. And it also forces you to do a lot of writing because you have to write proposals, you have to write reports. So you have to present your results all the time, right? So I think both those things help me get a good foundation for being pretty versatile and being able to apply my knowledge in various different ways.
Very good. I loved your answer because that's what I've been telling my students all the time. You learn the methodology and you get good at solving problems. That's what it's all about, right? It's not because you're not going to be an expert of a specific subject. That's not the idea, right? Yeah. That's very good. Thank you very much, Gavin. That was a nice work. And please, if you're watching us here, download his book, tell your friends, please, distribute to anyone you would think would be useful. You will help groundwater all over the world. Thank you very much. Thank you, Gavin.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.